So you don't charm the devil with your rock and roll load. Knows that country music's gonna save your soul. The devil finds his groove in them rhythm and blues that sound. It's gonna get you, son, in the end.
Welcome back to the Speakeasy. I'm Sother Teague.
And I'm Greg Benson, and we had major news breaking yesterday.
I think this is pretty big for our industry.
This is pretty huge. This has been percolating in the news for a while.
Yeah, man, I've seen all manner of opinions. I've been watching it quite closely. I'm curious to know maybe what you think, and I've got some opinions of my own. So let's jump into what the deal is. What happened yesterday?
Yeah, we're going to stop edging the listener. Yesterday, the employees of Attaboy, which is a storied bar here in New York City, voted 13-8 to unionize. They're Attaboy Local 134. This is pretty unprecedented in our industry. There have been attempts at a number of bars to do something like this over the years, particularly picking up momentum in like the last 10 years or so, I would say, and really kind of gaining a little bit more strength after the pandemic and all the issues that kind of laid bare. But this is the first time that it has actually passed a official vote that was overseen and certified by the government board that does this, whose name is escaping me right now. You could read the Vine Pair story. We'll link it if you want to get that granular into it. But Sother, I want to get your thoughts on this. I want us to avoid, I was thinking about this and we were texting about this last night. I want to avoid doing like takes, because I think that this issue goes beyond saying simply, I think this is a good thing, or I think this is a bad thing. There's more nuance to it than that. And I want to hear your thoughts and your shades of gray on it first.
Well, there's a ton going on here, and they're not the first. There have been other bars who've done it, but they have sadly not survived. That's the issue that's at hand.
Yes, that's true. Good clarification.
People think this is going to be a bar killer. Given, as you said, the storied history and the sort of importance that Attaboy holds in our field in general, everyone's quite nervous. My position is I'm definitely pro-union out there in the world, and I've worked in a union house as a chef. And the ones that work for hospitality are generally at very large places, hotels, the Waldorf, the Plaza, et cetera. Those are all union houses. And I get it because there's so very many, workers supporting the business itself that they need to have a communal sort of bargaining power to make sure that, conditions are great and salaries are great, et cetera. My real sort of opinion on this is, again, being pro-union, I think that the problem really arises when you look at unions in general. And I don't think that a standard union can apply itself to a place that has, and I didn't even realize it was 13-8, right? So that's 21 employees. That's very small. And so I think that there needs to be a tailoring. You use the word bespoke, and I think that's great because we use that word all the time in our field. There needs to be a bespoke version of the union at a place of this size and this stature. Now there's no stopping it now. It happened, right? The vote went through. How long it takes to get everything in order. Sometimes it literally takes a couple of years. So this will be a slow moving chain. I'm hopeful because I know the guys who own Attaboy, Sammy and Mickey.
Friends of the pod.
I know them personally. And they've been neighbors of mine. They opened in 2012, I opened in 2011. And they're creative, they're forward thinking, they're pioneers in our industry. I see a great opportunity for them to be pioneers in this part of our industry. I think if they can carve away and chisel out a union that works for their size and their stature, then others will follow suit. What I'm saying is I don't think that the notion that one size fits all works in anything. Hats, I don't care. It doesn't work. So it certainly doesn't work in this notion of like, well, let's just make a union out of it. I think we're gonna have to like really define what a union is and make a bespoke one for that size. And I think also maybe other bars could learn right away and say to themselves, well, rather than go to the place of having to get in the stickiness of creating a union, let's just create a contract from the very beginning. And we can effectively make our own union, at our own spots. So I don't know. I'm excited to see what happens. I'm nervous for the bar. I'm nervous for the team, and I'm nervous for the ownership. So, but like, no growth happens without discomfort. So I'm feeling a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, my thinking about this I think you can boil it down most concisely to two things that are true at the same time. First of all, as you've noted, unions as we currently think about them are not applicable to bars of Attaboy size and of the size of places that we tend to enjoy, that we tend to patronize. TGI Fridays fits a place in the overall ecosystem of humankind, but that's not the kind of thing that we on the show like. We like the smaller, more Attaboy size places, and unions as they currently exist don't really they don't map neatly onto that business model. That's the first thing that's true.
Right.
The other thing that's true is that every single person who works in the service industry has had a boss who has brazenly taken advantage of their staff. Yeah. You've probably even muttered under your breath, if you've worked in the service industry, I should fucking unionize this place. And the reason I'm hopeful about this is that Mikey and Sam aren't that type of boss. I think that they are, as has been noted in a lot of the coverage of this, the staff and the ownership are all equally invested in the well-being of every single person that works there and the bar itself. And this has, I think, a unique opportunity to be collaborative and to craft something new that hopefully, as we've been talking about, becomes a model that other places that maybe have less humanitarian-minded owners could copy and use to their advantage. That's my hopeful outlook for the future of these news events.
Yeah, I mean, listen, these guys really pioneered a lot of things in our industry. So it's not beyond their capacity to be creative and literally generate something entirely new for us to see. And I'm quite hopeful that they take up that mantle and overcome that challenge. It still makes me quite nervous for the business itself. As a business owner, I get it. It would make me nervous if my house unionized, but there's only 5 of us. It's like super small. And that's the thing, just for the listeners' edification, the reason that this gets sticky, and when I say tacky, the reason this gets sticky is because unions clearly and very concisely define job roles. And the problem is, once those job roles are defined and codified into the union law, then you cannot break those rules, even if it seems, patently stupid not to break them. A great, for instance, is, you go to Bemelman's bar, which is a union bar. There's always 2 bartenders behind the bar. The bar has, I don't know how many seats it has, but let's call it 15. But if you and your guest happen to sit at the center 2 seats, each bartender will serve you, one of you, and you will get separate checks at the end because their roles are defined. These seats are mine, those seats are yours, and that's just how it is. And if we break the rule, then we get in trouble from the union rep, right? So like at a bar the size of Attaboy, you can't make these crazy clear definitions of jobs. You still have to be like, well, if the toilet's overflowing, whoever's nearest has to go in there and do something about it, not wait for the porter, right? We don't have a porter. we can't do that. So I think that's where everyone's getting kind of nervous, and I am too. But I think that, again, these guys have the track record of being creative and making interesting things and making them succeed. So I am in their corner.
I agree. And speaking of people who have a track record of making interesting things and making them succeed, our guest today, who I think probably also has a lot of thoughts on this big news. He is the lead bartender of Tokyo Noir, which is a Japanese speakeasy bar in Long Beach, California. We have the one and only Kevin Lee joining us in the studio live from sunny Los Angeles, California. Nice to see you, Kevin. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Really great to have you on. Do you have a quick bit of input regarding unionization of Attaboy or unions in our field at all?
You can plead the fifth too. This wasn't in the pre-show.
This is not a
it can get a little
gotcha
bit
moment.
What do you think we should do about the Strait of Hormuz, Kevin?
Just
answer the question, Senator.
Yeah, I mean, it can get pretty squirrely talking about unions, especially in our industry. I mean, I think the safe answer is, hotels. I see a place for unions. But being a business owner for so long, it's like, it's interesting. I wonder how they're going to handle it. And I also am curious why the employees wanted to unionize at Attaboy. I mean, we know the legacy that they hold, and usually you see unions forming because, something happened or they're, not satisfied with their roles or what they're compensation is, or something, some sort of like possible unfairness in the workplace.
Hmm.
But Attaboy, just kind of shocking to see that kind of develop,
Well, yeah, and we saw it recently with Death and Co. making an attempt and getting to the vote, and then the vote didn't pass. So it is a little bit shocking to see that the vote did pass here at Attaboy. And everything that I've seen, they created their own Instagram, and they're posting almost every day regarding what they're looking for. Their demands aren't about salary. Their demands are more sort of workplace oriented. They want to be more involved in decision making. They want to be more involved in outreach and things like that. And they just, I feel like it sounds to me like they simply felt unheard. But either way, my opinion is either way, we're here now. So we have to deal with what's here now. And I think, again, I'm going to just keep sort of beating the same drum in different ways and say, I know these guys, I know they're creative, and I know that they're going to do something that's going to be creative, new and unheard of. And then it's probably going to like ripple out through the world.
I mean, we'll see. I'm excited to see how they're going to handle it. It'll be interesting if it works out. Like you said, a lot of bars that have unionized have unfortunately closed. And it's a tough news to try to swallow, especially when that so many bars have closed. And we all love Attaboy. They're an institution for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's a difficult needle to thread, and it's going to be a challenge, certainly. But it's a challenge that I think if anyone is going to be up to it, it's both the team and the ownership there. Because as we've been saying, it sounds like everyone is invested in their success. I feel like, again, those places that I mentioned where I've certainly had the thought of just like, I should form a goddamn union at this place. Smug pricks,
Right.
Those places I feel like would just be like, okay, you have a union, well, we're out of business, And I think it's good that it's at a place where everyone is invested in the success to the degree that they want to make this work. And I'm excited to see what comes of it. And I got to see what has come of your efforts out on the left coast, pivoting there seamlessly to what you're doing. Like I said, I was very lucky to visit Tokyo Noir last month. I had a wonderful time, but since then, I've kind of been struggling to describe how exactly its influences play out in the space itself. So in your own words, how does Tokyo Noir honor the ingredients and the techniques of Japan?
Automatically people think that we're trying to be the most authentic Tokyo style cocktail bar. And I think the best way I can describe Tokyo Noir is that it's a Japanese cocktail bar born out of Long Beach. So a lot of it is going to be fusion, right? So even the music taste, it's not going to feel like a Tokyo cocktail bar because it may look like it when you come in and it feels like it, but the music is going to be loud. It's going to be, classic hip hop with modern hip hop, along with some trap music, some new metal in there, some city pop, a mixture. And we just wanted there to be edge because I think Long Beach is so known for dive bars, right? And just an environment that's fun. So we didn't want to completely, be this bar that feels so foreign to the city. We wanted the city to love us as well. We wanted the city to feel like we are still a part of Long Beach, and most of our bartenders are Long Beach natives, born and raised. And it was really important for me to find my team that felt, one, had an influence in the city. So my bar lead has been a bar lead in Long Beach as well, and has a great reputation. Everybody knows him, right? He's more famous in Long Beach than I am. And, we try to be really close and tight knit with the Long Beach community because Long Beach is a city where, LA doesn't really claim them. Orange County doesn't really claim them. And they're just in their own pocket. So the bar industry in Long Beach is incredibly tight. We all know each other. We're all friends. So when we go out, it's a blast, and luckily the bar industry in Long Beach has really accepted us. And, they're sending people our way all the time. So, Tokyo Noir, the demographic is a lot of people from LA, Orange County, San Diego. But trying to capture that Long Beach market, in the beginning, it was a little rough because I think Long Beach was like, these are expensive cocktails, and also I want to dance.
We already
right?
have a bar for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So then trying to win over the city, I feel like took some time, but now, I would say at least half of our customers are Long Beach, which
Hell
feels
yeah.
great. But also the music has like really evolved too. In the beginning it was just like 90s hip hop only. And then we're like, well, let's start like adding in some more stuff and really developing the music and see how people are vibing, because for me, when I go to a bar, I just like to have fun, and creating that atmosphere of just almost like a neighborhood bar, but like we're doing really cool cocktails and we're able to really experiment, because I feel like we're kind of, to get to Long Beach is almost like a side quest anyways. So then like amongst the LA bar scene, we're able to do some crazy stuff and like really experiment and then see how the locals like it. But also like Long Beach has a great food scene and a great cocktail scene as well. Because we're getting so many transplants in from all over, the States, along with LA and Orange County. So like people's palates have, are pretty well developed. And the locals are getting, the best of both worlds because the dive bars are still there for them. And then you're getting these like amazing Michelin restaurants coming up, and you're getting these like, high level cocktail bars popping up as well.
I mean, everything has its seat in the pantheon. I think everything belongs as well. Well, listen, let's dig a little deeper on this the Japanese aspect. Japan has a pretty solid track record of seeing what other countries are doing and then adapting and doing them real quickly, but also oftentimes even better. We see that, of course, happen in our field with Japanese whiskey and Japanese style cocktail service. So now that Japanese service has come back across and gone, so it started here. Japanese picked it up and kind of refined it, and now you're bringing it back here. So like, what do you see as like sort of the switchback of that with ingredients and techniques and even what's going on in the bar space in general?
Yeah, I think Japanese bartending for me has been a huge influence in my career. Obviously with hand carving ice, making clear ice, 12 years ago when there was no like ice companies next to me. The fascination of ice was huge, along with the bar tools and the precision in shaking and stirring. I feel like Japan has been such a pioneer in that. But then when we look to those iconic Japanese classic bars, you're kind of seeing them not really being super popular in Tokyo. You're now getting those bars like SG Club, right? And Bar Trench that are like kind of taking that influence from New York style or European style, still keeping it very precise, but they are turning up the flavor profiles a little bit differently. And I think that, you're right. Japan does take a lot from, these other countries and are able to adapt. And you're starting to see a lot of these new cocktail bars in Tokyo, in Hokkaido, really, really killing it with being able to adapt, bring in new flavors, not just using, syrups from manufacturers. A lot of these classic bars, they tend to do that, but a lot of them are making these like incredible, prep heavy cocktails, that you didn't really see in Japan before. And for me, being in Long Beach, I didn't want to be a complete copy of a Tokyo style cocktail bar, because I think a lot of their techniques are great, but also trying to do it in Long Beach with the type of, palates that Americans have, it's different. So, we can't make every cocktail incredibly dry, and we can't make every classic incredibly dry. It has to be somewhere in the middle, I would say, so we train a lot on that. But it's also like, I think the whole world's palate is changing, the food scene's changing. Italian food has changed since, you're making Italian food from the 60s. I don't know if it'll fly anymore, because everyone is adapting to what's going on and what's new. So then I see that a lot with the flavor profiles in my cocktails. Like we try to keep it pretty Japanese. We make a lot of amaros, we make a lot of vermouths with Japanese ingredients. But when it comes to the cocktails, my demographic is Long Beach and LA, and people have a certain expectation, and we try to have fun with it.
If you're hearing the sound of my voice right now, I've got some bad news for you. You are only getting about 60 to 70% of the conversation that we had today with our guest. But if you want to hear the whole thing, you can join us and become a regular on our Patreon.
That's right. To hear the rest of the conversation, join us on our Patreon, become one of our regulars, and you'll receive all kinds of perks, including ad-free listening, so you won't have to hear us do this again.
And in addition to ad-free listening and longer shows, you are also going to get cocktail recipes from all of our guests, access to our live monthly hangouts, and a free cocktail kit each and every month from our good friends at Shaker and Spoon.
So head over to Patreon and become a regular of the Speakeasy. We'd love to have you there. Cheers.
Well, bouncing off of that, I want to drill down a little bit more into some of the specific offerings that you have at Tokyo Noir, because you've said, and we talked about a little earlier, that you blend Japanese techniques with seasonal Southern California offerings. So how's that play out specifically with what you're building on the menu?
We're taking a lot of seasonal ingredients in California. I work with some of the farmers markets around Long Beach. We'll take their offerings. We'll use their strawberries, let's say, and then we'll cordialify it and then use a dashi vermouth along with a few other ingredients. But most of our cocktails have some element of Japanese ingredients. And then, we try to blend that with, maybe we'll throw the cocktail. And I would say when it comes to Japanese techniques, I would say in New York, you see a lot more Japanese techniques than you do in LA. There's only like 2 or 3 bars that I know even throw cocktails in Los Angeles. And then there's maybe 2 bars that use cobbler shakers. And we're one of the 2 bars that use cobbler shakers regularly.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's a little, we're saying these words only because it's so foreign to Los Angeles, like Japanese hard shake. I think in New York, you see it more often. But, the hard shake that me and a few of these different bars use, even our hard shake is different. My hard shake is based off the 3-point. Another bar is based off the infinity hard shake. So it's different styles. But also the way that we use the techniques, because ice temperature is so important in Japanese cocktail making. So that comes into play along with the way we throw cocktails. Blending those techniques, but also like not being so rigid with our Japanese techniques either. I think when it comes to Japanese cocktail bars, there's no way that I can say that we're up to that level of precision, only because I think when it comes to the spirit of my bar, I don't want it to feel so rigid. Like we're not going to come, you're not going to come into the bar and we're not going to be at your side at all times. And we're not going to be bowing to you, as you leave the bar, because in the end it's very LA or very Long Beach. So we want somewhat casual vibes there. And also, it's not a very quiet bar either. It's a pretty loud bar. And that was done on purpose. Yeah, that was done on purpose because we want everyone to just have fun. And almost like this, this counter idea of what you expect the Japanese cocktail bar to look like. But then you go to Japan and then you'll see all these bars that are incredibly loud, But I think when people are picturing a Japanese cocktail bar, they're immediately thinking of like a hi-fi bar that's, you don't really are allowed to really speak loudly. A lot of these classic bars are going to be dead silent. And, I would have some customers that come in complaining because our bar is too loud. And they're like, these bars in Japan that I've been to, like, you're not allowed to be this loud. And I'm like, well,
we're not in Japan.
Yeah, we're not trying to be that. But yeah, when it comes to these cocktails also, it's just trying to be fun. I mean, you're not going to see a lot of these types of cocktails at a lot of Japanese cocktail bars. because we're doing a lot of, I mean, our flavor profiles are loud. And first of all, you don't really see a lot of loud flavor profiles in a lot of Japanese cocktail bars, even a lot of Japanese craft cocktail bars. A lot of the flavor profiles are going to be very subdued. But for us, it's like, you know, being in California, I grew up around fusion food all my life. And being around Korean food, Japanese food, and even the Japanese food in LA is so much louder than the Japanese food in Japan. So trying to take those elements and using ingredients, blending ingredients from Japan with ingredients that are American as well, you know? So we're not just trying to make everything a shochu cocktail or a sake cocktail, right? Like there's some Japanese cocktail bars in New York and in Chicago where almost like half the menu is shochu based. For me, it's like not trying to limit everything to fit into a box, but we're using, you know, fennel liqueur from Italy, and we're using a lot of agave spirits that, you know, you don't really see too much in Japan either. But also like blending it with a lot of Asian ingredients, right? So we have a lot of miso and we have a lot of like Asian pear. We use Japanese mango juice for our cocktails as well. But also, you know, blending that with not just Japanese whiskey either.
So this actually plays very well into another question I wanted to ask you, which is about accessibility. We've talked quite a bit already so far on this show about squaring circles. And I love all of the super nerdy, you know, Japanese ice parts per million stuff that we've been talking about. But I don't think that if I were to make a word cloud of that, accessible would be in there. And you've said it's important to you to have that element in these spaces that you're building. So, you know, we were just talking about bringing in different elements, not making the concept so in your face that it's unavoidable. But what other ways do you make these very high-minded ideals that the nerds really like accessible for people that, as we've said, just want to have a good drink and a good time?
When it comes to cocktail nerds, I'm sure it's the same with you guys. It's like, it's easy to talk to them and it's easy to nerd out. But I think when it comes, and really, you know, if I had to break it down, when it comes to some of these cocktails that I've had, like the cocktails that the cocktail nerds love are the cocktails that get returned the most, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
That's
so
always
then, so I made a soba cocktail. We made soba dashi for the suyu. You know, blended that with homemade yuzu, vermouth, and a bunch of different stuff, and that became the cocktail that kind of put us on the map when it came to like the articles and all the notoriety. But it was the most returned cocktail because it was so savory. But when we you know, we rotate the menu pretty often, so that one was for the summertime, so we rotated that one out for a chawanmushi cocktail. That was in the wintertime. But when we took that cocktail out, the cocktail nerds were not happy because they loved that cocktail. But that was the cocktail that was being returned the most, you know? And I think for me, when it comes to talking about, you know, because, yeah, when it comes to talking about Japanese ice and talking about Japanese waters and, you know, the flavor profile you're getting from the ice, you know, I think if we're going to be real, most regular people don't really care. You know, they really care about the vibes. And for me, I think cocktail bars are going to be, you know, I think when it comes to cocktail bars, the microphone and really the best PR is the cocktail nerds. So this kind of reputation that these cocktail bars have comes from the people that are the loudest, which are the cocktail nerds. So like Thunderbolt and Mirate, we all know they have a fantastic program. We can start nerding out about their program, but why do the regular peoples go to Thunderbolt and Mirate? You know, it's because they just hear how great it is. I don't think they can dissect the cocktails and tell you exactly why the cocktails are better here than they are over there. And I feel the same about our cocktail bar, where it's like, you know, we don't really have to explain too much about the ICE program outside of like the show. And I think the show is a very important part of bartending, especially in Japan as well. So much of making cocktails is a ritual over in Japanese cocktail bars. And for me, it's like, yeah, when we carve ice, that's part of the show. When we're throwing a cocktail, although these techniques are, they exist for a reason. And, you know, the the techniques are being used because, they're not being used just for a show. There's purpose behind every technique that we do, right? So carving ice and all of that, there's purpose to it. But I think it's also important to make sure that the guests are having a show, and for them to feel a vibe and an energy at the bar. And I think when it comes to cocktail nerds, we love talking ice, right? We love talking ice, we love talking water and what that does to the cocktail. But when it comes to normal guests, it's a show for them. And I think it kind of works both ways, because we want to have respect from the cocktail nerds, because I feel like they are our best advertisers.
I agree with that, right? Because they're out there in front, and they're making noise. They're the ones getting interviewed. So then the casual consumer is the one who's reading those interviews, and that's how that stuff happens. Well, let's flip the coin here and then go the other direction, right? Like all of these cocktails that are a show, and they're not just a show, right? Just because they are a show doesn't mean they're only a show. How do you figure in the classics then? Like, what are you doing at your bar to like show your guests that classics are there for a reason, right? It's great that you're using dashi and miso and house-made yuzu vermouth, but like how about your Manhattan?
The past bars that I've directed and ran, classics were a lot more sought after. I would say Tokyo Noir, people ask for classics maybe 5% of the time. And the people that ask for classics are generally people that know cocktails, right? And then the regular guests, they come in because they hear about our cocktail, so they want to order off the menu, or they're going to ask for like a vodka soda or a tequila soda, right? So it's two different customers, I would say. And especially when you get industry people in, obviously, they're going to ask for some sort of classic a lot of the times. And when I go to a cocktail bar, if I go to a friend's bar, I'm usually getting a Japanese highball or an old fashioned.
Sure.
But when it comes to classics, I think that they have an important part. And, when it comes to training my bar staff, we all kind of come together and we come up with the specs that we all kind of vote on are the best for our profile and what we like. And, we don't try to keep it too Japanese classic bar style where you're getting a very, very dry classic. But yeah, when customers come in and then they ask for Manhattan, usually, they're the smart customers, they're not, they're customers that have traveled for cocktails. So then, yeah, for us, it's like, we're using obviously trying to make the best Manhattan possible with the type of ice that we're using and the type of stir that we're doing. These small precisions that we try to do, especially for those types of guests, because they are smarter, right? And of course, like, the way that we stir, which is, and the temperature of the ice that we're using, those are things that the normal guests they're not really nerding out. They don't really care about that, right?
Right.
Well, I do have one question I want to pivot off of that. It's like maybe guests don't notice stirring, but throwing definitely has some of that theatricality we were talking about. So I think that it sounds like in parts of your technique that are very well thought out that us nerds can look at and be like, I see what they did there. The average person just sees the skill of one human being who's able to get a very, very wide wingspan of liquor from one container to another, which is just an impressive physical feat on its face. I don't know. It sounds like maybe that's how you're, again, talking about squaring circles, finding the intersection of the Venn diagram between what the dorks care about and what, just your average Joe off the street is going to find interesting.
Dude, actually 100%. 100%, because the theatrics is a segue into talking about it, right? So when we're carving ice, there's going to be guests that come up trying to videotape or whatever. And then there's going to be people that have never seen that before. And then they start talking about why are you carving ice? And then they ask, why are you importing ice from Japan? That's usually the two main questions. So it's a good segue for us to really start to educate the guests, and I think we all know how smart the guests are now. Even your regular guests have all had Yamazaki and Hibiki. Everyone has had everything these days. So
Everyone's heard of Satol. It's crazy. What am I even doing here? Why do I even have a podcast anymore?
that's what I'm saying. So then when we can get when we can start educating guests on things that they haven't heard or haven't seen before, it is a very special moment, at least for me, because 10 years ago, just whiskey education was so cool and the energy was so different. But now people are coming in, hard to impress them. So that's why I lean so heavily on vibes now, right? And kind of the theatrics. But you're right, the theatrics are what brings more questions in, and we can really talk about it. Because a lot of people think that throwing is just for the show. They're like, oh, that's a neat trick. And I'm like,
Right.
And then we have to get into like why we do it. Like, this is one of the oldest cocktail techniques out there, in history. So it's not like a new thing. It's really old. and bartenders have been doing it for a long time, and people just haven't seen it, especially in LA. So
right, it's a technique that changes the texture and thus the flavor and the mouthfeel of the cocktail. And like once you can explain that to them, they're like, oh, you're not just doing it for show, you're doing it because it has a merit for being here.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man, we've had a great conversation talking about your bar. One of the questions we always ask at the end, though, you've already mentioned a couple that you probably are doing this at. You're out there in California. Where are you drinking these days? You want to shine a light on some of your pals and say where you like to go get a drink?
Yeah. The bar that I drink at the most is probably Spring Street Bar in downtown. I love those guys. Great program, and also just like a really nice neighborhood bar. Of course, Thunderbolt, Mirate, fantastic bar programs. I can't speak more highly about them. And also Bar Next Door, I think it has a really good bar program over in West LA.
Well, hey, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the show and chatting with us about your program. And thank you for a lovely night of hospitality when I was out there on your coast recently. It was a great space, and I encourage anyone who happens to be in the LA, but not quite LA, but still sort of in the general LA cloud of Long Beach to go and check it out. It's a great spot. If people wanted to follow along with your exploits, where can they find you on this big, beautiful, weird internet of ours? Do you have an Instagram account you want to plug?
Yeah, my Instagram account is Kevin Byung Hun. You can also follow Tokyo Noir's Instagram as well.
Well, that is going to do it for us this week on the Speakeasy. But if you want to hear more from us, you can always become a regular on our Patreon. Our regulars get all kinds of perks, including ad-free shows, longer shows, invites to our monthly members-only live hangouts, a free cocktail kit each and every single month from our good friends at Shaker and Spoon, and cocktail recipes from all of our guests. The only thing in this world worth having that you don't need to be a Patreon regular for, in fact, is our weekly sauced updates. These are free for everyone because we love you. Sother, what's going on over there, buddy?
Well, we just released our most recent, once a month we do a bonus episode, and the bonus episodes always involve either a side dish that's pertinent to some of the dishes that we've done, a technique or a single ingredient, or finally, and this was the first one we've done because we're such a new show, a historical episode. And we did an episode that involved two specific vegetables, onions and artichokes, and two separate stories of how they have both been manipulated by the financial markets and or the mafia, involving violence and international intrigue. So a really great episode. That's one of the bonus episodes of Sauce that we just put out, which you can't access unless you are a subscriber. But I highly recommend you subscribe to Sauced, and that way you can get all of this cool information and tons of fun with us.
Hell yeah. So subscribe to Sauced, subscribe to this podcast, and be sure to tune in next week when our guest is going to be Aaron Duhovne of Casa Lotos Satol. That joke I made earlier about everyone already knowing everything about Satol, that was a joke. There's tons of stuff you don't know, so tune in next week for that. Yep. But until next time, cheers, everybody.
Cheers, everybody.
So you don't shun the devil with your rock and roll.